So I thought I would cover this because this is relatively new-ish at the time I'm recording this video. Maybe more people will have covered it by the time this video comes out. But there has been now a joint proposal by Brazil and China for peace negotiations with participation of Russia and Ukraine. Now, I am not against peace negotiations. I am not against peace negotiations. But what I've always said and stressed is that part of the reason why we are arming and backing Ukraine is so that any potential negotiations they go into, they can come out with a very, very good hand. And Zelensky is already sort of rebuffed this deal. He said, well, why have you sort of come out and done this between yourselves when you've given us no input? And I want to stress this because this isn't the first time China's done this. China has done this before where they've sort of said, oh, we want to have peace negotiations. We want to see this come to an end. And Zelensky has gone and said, okay, you want to have peace negotiations? Excellent. Here's our 10-point plan. Here's what we want to do. And this, I think, is a really crucial point in this, that as the West, we should be there to back up Ukraine, that it is Ukraine leading these peace negotiations. Because one of the big problems of any further future peace agreement is future security guarantees. For example, if this is going to be a Brazilian and China-led peace negotiation proposal, China claims it has been, it claims neutrality in all this, but it has very, very, very much been backing Russia by providing it weapons, armors, ammunition, helping it, ignoring sanctions, etc. So how neutral really can we believe China should be in this? Then, of course, you've got how honest are these two countries going to be in their negotiations? How are they going to treat Ukraine in all this? This is what, we need to be sort of very careful and sort of go in and see what happens. Again, not against peace negotiations, but part of the reason why we have been backing Ukraine, and we should still continue to back Ukraine throughout all this, is, hey, Ukraine's territorial integrity should be preserved. Russia should get absolutely nothing. If it does decide that it wants to sort of keep that territory, then as far as we're concerned, we're going to put international sanctions, not only Russia, but companies who then do business with Russia. Well, guess what? They're going to get sanctioned as well. There's already stuff happening this, I think it's either Thursday or Friday. Some of this stuff goes into effect about going after the shadow Russian oil fleet that has been, again, trying to sort of sell oil and gas, trying to sort of circumnavigate, international sanctions on Russia's selling of oil and gas. So going after that is very good from sort of a Western point of view. But we'll see. What has, of course, Brazil and China actually said about this? Well, they've got 6 points, and we'll go into this. We'll have a bit more of a discussion about them as well as we go through them. But before we do that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. Down below, there's links to the Patreon page, the One Foundation link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's have a look at what this. So this is actually from the Brazilian government's website of what they have had to say about this. So, H.E. Wang Yi, I think that's how you say it, member of the Politic Bureau of the CCP, the Central Committee, and Minister of Foreign Affairs for China, met with H.E. Castro Alfon, chief advisor to the President of Brazil in Beijing, where the two sides had now a very in-depth change and the views of now pushing for a political statement of the Ukraine crisis, calling for the de-escalation of the situation, reaching the following of common understandings. And again, it doesn't instantly sound like this is going to lead to a lasting peace. All they've really called for is a de-escalation of the situation. But what if, let's say, Argentina had taken, a large chunk of Brazil and was basically saying, "Okay, Brazil, come at me. This territory is mine now." Um, don't think Brazil would be calling for a de-escalation of the situation. No, they would be like Ukraine, pushing to take some of this territory back, or at least making sure that they got this territory back in a peace deal. It should not be ceded to any sort of country taking it like this. Bear in mind, also, you take Brazil's recent actions they've taken against Venezuela when they have said they're going to annex a large part of Guyana. They put special forces on the border of Venezuela to deter them from doing that. So it's very weird that they come along and they say this. So point one is the two sides call now on all relevant parties to now observe three principles for de-escalating the situation, namely, no expansion of the battlefield, no escalation of fighting, and no provocation by any party. So essentially, they want to freeze the conflict. That is basically right. There is going to be, well, not an armistice because they haven't called for an armistice, but essentially a freezing in this. Bear in mind, how do you know Russia is going to keep this? Because in the past, Russia has used such pauses to prepare for further fighting. Just saying, guys. So again, how can we trust Russia? Which, bear in mind, is always going to be a huge stumbling block because Russia has been a continuous bad actor in all these peace deals it has signed over these years, not only just in Ukraine from Minsk 1, Minsk 2, in Chechnya, in Georgia. It has a history of doing it. So, point two. The two sides believe that the dialogue and negotiations are now the only viable solution to the Ukraine crisis. All parties should create conditions for the resumption of direct dialogue and now push for de-escalation of the situation until the realization of a comprehensive ceasefire. China and Brazil support an international peace conference held at a proper time that is recognized by both Russia and Ukraine with equal participation of all parties, as well as fair discussions of all peace plans. So, okay, what does Russia end up putting into the table? What if Russia's peace plans, as we've seen before, are actually absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and a complete non-starters for 10 because they basically just say, okay, we're taking all this land. Well, what do you do then? Because honestly, it's a non-starter, but it's also, again, trying to say we want to freeze the conflict, and while this conflict is frozen, we're going to try and hammer out some sort of peace proposal. Meanwhile, of course, given Russia's track record of what they've done during this time, they will prepare for future attacks, future assaults, reinforce their lines, and basically hold on to that land. And then, of course, what happens should Russia break said peace deal? So, point three. Efforts are now needed to increase for humanitarian assistance in relevant regions and prevent a humanitarian crisis now on a larger scale. Attack on civilians or civilian infrastructure must be avoided, and civilians, including women, children, prisoners of war, POW, must be protected. Two sides now support the exchange of POWs between the parties of the conflict. Again, that's, I think, probably the most sensible one at the moment. Yeah, let's exchange prisoners, let's exchange POWs, let's not, attack civilians. Who's been the one attacking civilians? Well, that's been Russia. Just to point out that there. And finally, point four, The use of weapons of mass destruction, particularly nuclear weapons and chemical and biological weapons, must be opposed. All possible efforts must be made to prevent nuclear proliferation and avoid nuclear crisis. Well, again, remember the only one that's been doing that, of course, has been Russia. I'm surprised they're not calling that Russia out for that, but there you go. Probably should. You know, point five, attacks on nuclear power plants and other peaceful nuclear facilities must be opposed. All parties should now comply with international law, including the Convention of Nuclear Safety, and resolutely prevent man-made nuclear accidents. Who's the one who attacked a nuclear power plant and then decided in a really smart way, which they are still, using it as an ammunition storage point? You know, yeah, smart idea, Russia. And then 6, dividing the world into isolated political or economic groups should be opposed. The two sides now call for efforts to now enhance international cooperation on energy, currency, finance, trade, food security, and a security of critical infrastructure, including oil and gas pipelines, undersea optical cables, electricity, energy facilities, and fiber optic networks, as to protect the stability of global industrial and supply chains. Okay, but bear in mind, one of the reasons that I think they might be doing that is because Ukraine has been attacking Russian oil depots and things like that. And if Russia wants to keep this war going, it has to sell oil. So, I would say Ukraine attacking those sites, if it's what's keeping Russia propped up, then hey, crack on, Ukraine, force them to the table in this. So finally, it finishes off. The two sides now welcome members of the international community to try and support and endorse all the above mentioned now with common understandings, jointly play now constructive roles in de-escalating the situation and promote peace talks. You will not get a de-escalation of the peace talks until really Ukraine feels that it is generally safe to do so. And that's what still is this. And there is bear in mind, there is nothing in there that says about sovereign territory, territorial sovereign integrity of territory. Where's the point, Brazil and China, where you're saying, hey, Russia, get out of Ukraine, jog on? So bear in mind, of course, this is coming from China. It definitely does seem China-led by this. China isn't the most neutral actor when it comes to this. It would, of course, like to at least maybe maintain Russia as a somewhat, credible ally, potentially in the future. But I think's reliance on this is something else. But there you go. I think this is a complete non-starter for 10. And you can see why Zelensky has said, why didn't you consult us on this? Why haven't we been involved in something like this? Now, Zelensky is going to meet with Xi, I think in a couple of weeks' time, maybe about a month's time, I think. So we'll see what happens from there. But I think if China wants to be a honest broker in this situation and neutral, then China needs to start saying, the territorial integrity of Ukraine should be preserved, should be protected, and Russian forces should leave that territory. And we should be moving back to the the 1991 border agreement that was settled upon. So we'll see what happens on this, but I think the only other country that has responded and backed this is Iran. That's as far as I'm aware of anyone else who's come out and supported this. But these ones, the only one you can really say is, we don't want weapons of mass destruction. But remember, the only one in this conflict with weapons of that nature is, of course, Russia. The one who has been attacking nuclear power plants has been Russia. Yeah, we do need to increase humanitarian assistance. But again, who was the one who's been attacking civilians, civilian infrastructure, even torturing POWs? Well, that's been Russia. Yeah, you can see why Zelensky and the Ukrainians were a bit upset about this, and especially once again not being involved. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.